Hi, everyone. We're live. We're live at the
We are alive.
We are alive at the Modern Elder Academy here in beautiful Baja, Mexico. Muy buenos dias. It's 8 a.m. here, and I was up, Chip, for the sun this morning. I was
gorgeous.
up at 6:15 a.m. for my meditation and my staring at the stars.
And yesterday morning, you were up for your shaman journey.
Yes.
Yes. We do it all here.
Yes, we do.
Have you had a massage yet?
No, tomorrow.
Okay, tomorrow's the massage. Oh.
Yes, we are here. I am just so happy. This is my very first LinkedIn Live, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live from another country. And I couldn't think of a better place and a better person with whom to be than you, Chip.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. I've enjoyed getting to know your community over the course of maybe a decade or something like that, more even. Thank you for being here to listen to us rattle on in the morning in Southern Baja.
We're taking your comments and your questions today as well. So make sure you tell us, where are you from this morning in the chat? And know that if you have to zoom off to business meetings today, that we will be providing this as a replay everywhere you get your podcasts. So make sure you look for us there at The Mindful Marketer. So today's topic, Chip.
Well, I guess that today's topic is about compassionate marketing. And the workshop we're doing here this week, MEA is called Modern Elder Academy. The name came from my time at Airbnb when I was the mentor to the three founders starting almost 10 years ago. And what a journey, 7.5 years, 4 years full-time, 3.5 years as a strategic advisor. And during that time, they called me the Modern Elder. I wasn't sure I liked that a lot, but then they said, Chip, you're as curious as you are wise. And that's how we define a modern elder. And so we do workshops here every week. And this week's workshop with Dr. Shauna Shapiro has focused on the idea of mindfulness and self-compassion. So I think one of the questions we might ask ourselves is, what is a compassionate company when it comes to its marketing?
Yes, that was our inquiry today for all of you. The reason that this got triggered for me, Chip, is that for the past 2.5 years, there have been a number of people talking about the return of empathy in your marketing, the return of empathy in your culture. And the big Baja aha that I had this week was, it's not really about empathy. It's more about compassion.
Yeah. Talk about the difference.
Well, here's how I unpack it. And, I'm not a neuroscientist like Shauna is.
Yeah.
However, what it means to me is that compassion is the ability to trust myself and be more forgiving of myself before I can be more forgiving of others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what I heard from her as well was the idea that empathy is beautiful, but it actually can be something where the fuel runs low if you don't have something, if you're not refueling and refilling yourself with self-compassion. So empathy is a great thing, but it also has a depletion factor to it, whereas compassion for others starts with self-compassion. And so, I guess I would just say, I'm curious about companies that actually articulate this. I think Patagonia, certainly in the last few months, has gotten a lot of attention and has a long history as a marketer of being compassionate. We do our best here at MEA. What are some things we do that are compassionate marketing oriented things here? First of all, I think you all know that if your operations are not aligned with your marketing, if the words you're saying about yourself and your brand don't align with how you operate, it doesn't go very far. I mean, at some point, people get the fact that the fix is on. So I think for us, operations are an important piece of this in terms of how do we give back to the community? How are we a fundamental foundational piece of our small rural fishing and farming village and surfing village here in Baja, such that when COVID came along, we didn't lay anybody off. We took people down to 75% of their normal salaries, but nobody actually got laid off for almost more than a year, well, it was about 7 months, 8 months, where no one was working, but they were getting paid. And how could we give back to the community at the same time? And then how do we give back to our when I say the community, I mean the local community, but also how do we give to people who have socioeconomic situations that wouldn't allow them to pay full tuition? So over 50% of the people who come to MEA are on some kind of scholarship or financial aid that we give them.
Yes. And it's a beautiful thing to be sitting here in a room with 19 cohorts who come in from all over the world, really.
Yeah.
And we all have a different story to share with people. And we are all here for each other to share our story. I also want to invite you to think about how you communicate with your customers. Can we talk about here? We're going to pass along right now a tip or a tool that I think all of us can use when we are conducting conversations with one another in our companies, or when you're reaching out to stakeholders. And you've been to many of my shows in the past. This is episode 67. And you know that we talk about stakeholders, not just customers. I'd like us to share with you now something that really hit me, and it's called the vaults. Can we talk about the 3 vaults and maybe a new way of looking at how we initiate conversations with people?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the 3 vaults are relevant both to individuals, but it also could be relevant to a company. So we learned this from Aaron Taylor, who's one of our faculty members, former NFL hero with the Green Bay Packers, has 2 Super Bowl rings. So he said that most of us have 3 vaults. Well, all of us have 3 vaults. The first vault, in terms of how we communicate, is the facts. And so if that's for a human, that means like, okay, you meet someone for the first time and they say, where do you live? What do you do? And these are the facts of our life. Where did you grow up? Are you married? Whatever. So generally speaking, as we get to know people, the facts are what we tend to spend our time on. Once we have a little bit more time with someone, we may get to vault 2, which is the stories. And the stories are often, that's where marketers spend a lot of their time. Facts alone, unless it's a very mental kind of purchase decision of your stakeholder, your customer, facts are not enough. Stories are what actually help sell and maybe influence and persuade and create love. But the third vault is the part that's interesting, because the second vault has the risk that the narrative or the story we have is something that becomes a bit habitual. It's not the facts, which are sort of surface level, but it's sort of like it's ingrained. And frankly, it can be boring if the story just sort of doesn't actually evolve. So the third vault is what comes from essence, like what's going on in this moment. And as a human in circle, when we're here with the group, there's 19 as Lisa mentioned in the cohort, and then 3 of us as teachers. So 22, like people speaking from essence, speaking like what's going on for me at this very moment. And it's a very unusual practice, because we usually have a tendency to edit ourselves or feel like people don't want to hear my streams of consciousness. Now, when it comes to marketing and companies, I don't think it's so much that people don't want to hear the streams of consciousness of a company, but they do want to hear something that feels unfiltered. And that is what the third vault is. It's unfiltered. Now, it still may have a story attached to it, but it doesn't feel like it had the corporate seal of approval attached to it, which is often what the Vault 2 has, which is stories that have been approved by the comms team.
They've been blessed by the comms team. Okay, all you comms team people, you're going to get a little offended now.
No, listen.
That you're like, well, wait a minute, that's my role. I am to make sure that our messages are consistent and they've been sanitized. I don't love that word, sanitized.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to do is put bleach all over my heartfelt messages to people. Let's maybe share a couple of examples of what a third vault story might be and how could we use that. Remember too that we're taking your questions and your comments, and I see we do have some people with us this morning early, but can we maybe throw a couple of examples out?
Yeah, let me use one from MEA's world. So March 15th, 2020 comes along and we have to shut our doors. We had a workshop coming the following week. March 13th, we had to call everybody and say, please don't come to Mexico because we're not going to be open. Then we had to figure out what was next. And we figured out a bunch of things. We made a lot of pivots. But we also had to reach out to our alumni community at that point. We have about almost 3,000 alumni now, but back then we had about 750. And we came from the third vault. We just said, we're keeping our employees, our 30 employees employed here because we want to make sure that there's some stability in the local community. But we could use your help. We would love your help in helping to fund that, helping to fund scholarships for the future, and just helping to provide us some cash flow during a time that's really difficult. Now, most companies would never do that. I mean, I guess it sounds like you're panicking, but being open to saying, here's what we're going through led to over $300,000 in donations and future gift certificates for future workshops being purchased by purely our alumni, because we had said, hey, we need your help. I'm reminded of the movie It's a Wonderful Life and George Bailey in that movie. Jimmy Stewart feels like, he's going to jump off the bridge, and Clarence, the guardian angels, helps him to see what his town would have been like if he hadn't existed. And then he decided he didn't want to jump off the bridge, Jimmy Stewart as George Bailey. And at the end of the film, all of this community comes together and brings money and says, we're going to actually put more money in your bank, because there was a run on the bank that was going on. Long story short is, when you are authentic and even vulnerable as an organization, and most importantly, you have built up some emotional bank account with your stakeholders such that they love you and appreciate you and know that in a rainy day, they're going to come through. There's all kinds of opportunities for you to tap into the goodwill that you have created. But you have to have created the goodwill first. If you haven't done that, and that gets back to, are you a compassionate organization? If you've done that, then people will, maybe come through for you as they did for us.
Yes. And here's another way you can play with that model of being a compassionate third vault communicator. Next time you have a team meeting, go around the room and create a circle instead of a classroom setup. I think designing the environment of trust, again, for either your customers or your team members in marketing, is to go around the room and have people fill in the blanks. What you really don't know about me.
If you really knew me.
If you really
knew me, you would know, fill in the blank.
Right. If you really knew me, you would know. And just try that on for size to see, how does it break the ice and create a 5% more compassion, either towards your teams, towards your customers, or bonus points towards yourself. It would be really powerful. And it really removes a lot of the ego and the sense of, I need to show, I'm one of the smartest people in the room.
Yeah. What if, when I was at Airbnb, I realized I was definitely not going to be the smartest person in the room. I was age 52. The average age in the company was 26. And I never worked in a tech company before. So there are a lot of smart people in the room. But I came to realize that what was valuable was being the most curious person in the room. And my curiosity, I think, had a lot to do with helping the company see its blind spots and see how we could take a little tech company oriented toward millennials and turn it into the world's most valuable hospitality company. So curiosity is the elixir of life.
Yes, I'm going to just throw out a few other examples and remind people we are taking comments and questions that I picked up this week. Because between you and Shauna, I have a treasure trove of notes and ideas. So one of the things that you really need to know about me is my perfectionist gene can really kick in for these live streams. And I showed up this morning as my own producer. So I showed up with all of my portable materials, my portable camera, my portable ring light. and I didn't go, spend hours preparing for this show today. And so far so good. It's working out in spite of
and
it.
the Wi-Fi is working out, and who knows what could happen. But well, you know what? Perfectionism is, we learn it when we're young, and we think somehow if we're perfect, we will be more loved. And then we realized over time that, frankly, perfectionism leads towards a challenging self-love, meaning it's hard to love yourself if you're not perfect, if that's your mentality. And so perfectionism certainly gets in the way of actually sometimes even starting something. If I can't, we talked about fixed and growth mindsets. So if you have a fixed mindset, you have a tendency to focus on proving yourself, and you define success as winning. If you have a growth mindset, you have a tendency to focus on improving, not proving yourself, but improving yourself. And instead of focusing on winning, you focus on learning. Perfectionism is a fixed mindset. It's the idea that you only want to play games that you can win or that you can be perfect at. And what that does is it limits your options. Your sandbox gets really small. And this is particularly true as we get older. So just know that fixed versus growth mindset can have a huge impact on how many options you give yourself.
It really does. And Carol Dweck really helped to catalyze that in our work, in my personal work, and also it's a true foundational piece of the Modern Elder Academy and how you work here.
Our curriculum is based upon really 5 key pillars. One is, how do we cultivate and harvest wisdom in our lives? The world is full of knowledge workers. I think we could use a few more wisdom workers. Secondly, how do we reframe aging? At 54 years old, which is the average age of the people who come here to MEA, if you're going to live till age 90, you are exactly halfway through your adult life at age 54. 18 to 90, the halftime is 54. So, man, we have a lot of life ahead of us. Very important for us to keep that in mind. Thirdly, there is the idea of moving from a fixed to a growth mindset, which I mentioned. Fourthly is, how do you navigate midlife transitions? So let's talk about that for a moment. And then I'll say the 5th one, and then we'll come back to transitions. The 5th one is, how do you create a more regenerative lifestyle, including your purpose? So transitions are really interesting. So on a personal level, transitions can be anything from changing your career, getting divorced, becoming an empty nester, going through menopause, you name it.
Andropause.
Andropause for men. Maybe you're going through all of them at the same time. That's what is called a life quake.
Life quake.
Yes. That's from Bruce Feiler, who's one of our guest faculty members. So long story short is, when you're going through transitions, knowing that there's 3 stages to a transition is helpful. The first stage is you have to end something. And often when we are struggling with a transition, we haven't ritualized the process of ending something. And we spend a lot of time on that here. Like, how do you help people to end something well? And then you move into the messy middle. Think of the caterpillar to butterfly journey. This is the chrysalis. We like to talk about midlife chrysalises here, not just midlife crises. And the midlife chrysalis is where it can be dark and gooey, and it's a little awkward, and you're in this liminal state in between 2 things, but it's where the transformation happens. And then on the other side of that is the new beginning. And the new beginning is exciting, but you also have to be really open to that growth mindset, because often in a new beginning, you're a beginner again. And that doesn't mean you've got it all together. So that's sort of the traditional way of looking at a transition in 3 stages.
And one of the other things that really surprised me is you talked about Peter Drucker.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason that I'm here at the Modern Elder Academy, is really pushing myself into learning new things that have absolutely nothing to do with marketing strategy or marketing leadership, but more about other skills. So what Peter Drucker said is, putting yourself in learning a whole new skill or learning a whole new topic can really get you out of your comfort zone and positively inform your work and career, to the point where he said that it lubricates your work. It lubricates your
Your
communication.
mind, your heart, your soul.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a man, as you know, Peter Drucker, probably the founding person of modern management. He lived till age 94. He wrote 2/3 of his 40 books after age 65. And every 2 years, he would study a topic that had nothing to do with being a business school professor. And what he found was by doing that, it kept him curious. Gets back to the curious word. And again, this idea of curiosity and wisdom is so important. All of the world's knowledge is on this darn little machine I've got in my pocket, my iPhone. Google has made knowledge ubiquitous. But I define wisdom as metabolized experience that leads to distilled compassion. Let me unpack that for a second. So metabolized experience.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
So let's just say it one more time. Metabolized
experience. Metabolized experience means you've had the life experiences that allow you to have pattern recognition and maybe intuition about what's coming next based upon what's happened in the past. The past is the prologue for the future. So, I mean, to metabolize experience, at age 28, I started writing in my wisdom book every weekend. And it was like a journal, but it wasn't really a journal. It was actually more like bullet points of what I'd learned that week. And by doing that, I'm turning 62 in less than 2 weeks. So for 34 years, I've been metabolizing my experience. The acceleration of metabolizing your experience allows you to become wise faster. And often it is the skinned knee or the broken nose, figuratively speaking, that actually gives you the better lessons that that sink deeper. So metabolized experience that leads to distilled compassion. So distilled compassion, what does that mean? So compassion is being there for other people, feeling a sense of love and care for others in a way that gives them a sense that you support them. Distilled compassion is slightly different. So compassion, someone could be compassionate across all people. The Dalai Lama is that way. But distilled compassion means you know just what is needed right now for this person. So to distill it means you've taken all the kinds of ways that you can be compassionate, but you've distilled it down to exactly what this person needs. And that person could be yourself. But metabolized experience that leads to distilled compassion. Because if wisdom was just metabolized experience alone, it wouldn't be a social good. And wisdom is a social good. Knowledge isn't necessarily a social good, but wisdom is.
And really, coming to the Modern Elder Academy gave me the opportunity to step back and tap into my own wisdom and the wisdom of my elders. So another thing that really surfaced for me that I have ignored for decades was, what lessons have my ancestors taught me? And how do I open up my channel of intuition to allow those messages to come to me? So for those of you who are saying, okay, this is where I'm going to shut off the program because Lisa's getting a little bit too esoteric for me, just imagine yourself giving yourself 1 minute a day to close your eyes, put your hand on your heart, and ask, what would fill in the blanks? My grandmother, my father, my great-grandfather, what message might they have for me? And what lessons could I gain from them that they want to pass down to me? So as you're crafting strategies, as you are working through some very difficult moments of hybrid work environments, new expectations from customers and stakeholders, how can you apply some of that wisdom or seek out that wisdom to come up with fresh new perspectives? So that's my challenge for many of you. And again, you can try it on. It may fit, it may not. It's okay. I also want to shift to another lesson I took from this week from the Modern Elder Academy. If you're joining us late, we are live from the beautiful, the bucolic, the magical Modern Elder Academy here in Baja, Mexico. the compassionate container. Can we talk about that for a minute? So we also, the co-leader of this week's session was Dr. Shauna Shapiro, and the container she talked about contains 3 key elements. So a little note taking here if you wish. The first one was intention, attention. So intention, attention, and attitude, and how that really creates the conditions for compassionate communication, compassionate marketing, and compassionate alignment in your respective field or career. So let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the intention piece is also something that our shaman, Saul Cooperstein, talks about, is the idea of love, faith, and intention. Intention is an important part of our lives, and yet it almost goes unsaid. There might be an intention for something, but it's not actually, you haven't called it out, and therefore it might be a blind spot. So, in a bit, I was actually reading a marketing plan this morning for MBA for this next year from our head of marketing, and what I was looking at, I liked it. I liked what Noelle had written with her team, but actually there was more. I felt like it needs a little more intention.
Really?
Like, what is, yeah.
So did it feel a little stiff? Like, okay, we need this many, first party data. We need to capture
It felt
this
tactical
much with our digital strategy.
Yeah, no, it was very good, and it felt more tactical, and not like bigger intention. Like, what is it that, what are we going back to? So I think back to Dr. Shauna Shapiro's work, the idea of intention helps to, in my opinion, create the trajectory of where you want to go. Intention sort of makes sure that, your compass in life, whether it's for your company or for yourself, has you going in the right direction. And that leads to then attention, which I'll let you speak to.
Yeah, so intention, to get that anchored too, is really, why do we care about this marketing plan? Why does this, and a quick hint, it's not so we can make X millions of dollars in revenue to satisfy our venture capitalists. That's not exactly, that's an example of a goal.
Yeah.
Okay,
goals are
but
important.
It's not. So I think also we need to understand there is a distinction between intentions and goals.
Yeah. Intention, there's lots of other ways you could put it, like, again, vision, mission, whatever. There's a lot of ways you could put it. But what I like about it is helping you to see the promised land of where you want to go to. And so I would just say but let's go back to attention then. So attention,
Yep.
once you know you're on the right path, then you look at the attention of how are you, as a human, how are you breathing, for example? How are you showing up in a way that allows you to be both effective and compassionate at the same time?
Yes. How present are you?
How present are you?
If you were to do a 1 to 10 scale of just how present am I to really making this happen, versus how am I juggling it with 7 other things, and it's kind of a side hustle or a side focus. It's really, am I fully here to focus my time and energy?
Yeah. So attention and presence are, they are the same. I mean, they really are.
And then the third element is attitude.
Yeah.
So Dr. Shauna, again, we talk a lot about Dr. Shauna Shapiro. So you make sure you look her up, and her book that is really getting a lot of traction this week with us is called Good Morning, I Love You. And that's a whole topic around,
and it's called
self-compassion.
in the UK, because they can't handle that title. It's called Rewire Your Brain. I think. Yes. Or Rewire Your Mind. So the UK and the US slightly different.
Right. Yes, and so the third part she talks about in this book is more your attitude, which is really, how am I paying attention? How am I paying attention? And what is my mindset around this? Is it a growth mindset? Is it a mindset of experimentation? And am I bringing an element of playfulness to it so that I can really open up my creative channels? Or am I feeling really constricted and tight and limited, or having a fixed mindset? So having that in mind as you're designing whatever communication, marketing plan, or team program that you're putting in place can really make a difference. So remember, it's intention, attention, and attitude. That's the wonderful triumph, the wonderful triple play that she talked about. So, boy, we've covered a lot of ground today. I have pages and pages of notes. But today, what I wanted to do was to open everyone's eyes to a whole new level of listening and wisdom and communication by thinking more about how can compassion play a key role in how I set out my day, how I communicate with my stakeholders, and how I lead myself.
Yeah, even just the word compassion, if you break it down into a start and a finish, you got com, like, so with passion. So compassion often comes from a place of feeling like, oh, I just want to be nice and good to people. Yes, that's true. But if you could be nice and good with people with passion, with a sense that your heart is in it, that you feel deeply about the kind of way you're showing up in the world. That's really what compassion can be as well.
And compassion will naturally happen when you set your intention. Like my intention that I set with you, Chip, before we started the live stream today was, we are going to bring great value to our global community. And we are going to give them some inspiration to make some difficult choices as the year unfolds, as we see so many things happening around us, the world events, the economic uncertainty, strange weather patterns, whatever those are. And again, don't take our word for it. Look into the work of Dr. Shauna Shapiro with studies that demonstrate that just being capable of that 15-second pause to set your attention activates dopamine in your brain to give you the strength and the confidence to move forward. So my intention, I hope, was fulfilled today. I also want to apologize. I am thinking there are a lot of comments because I'm seeing a little flashing button on my screen, and my producer, Marissa Calley, is not with us today. So I want to thank her for the 74 other shows that she's helped me with, that I swam solo on this one today.
You did. Listen, and we're still live. So that's one good thing. We don't know what you're saying to us.
So and I'm seeing that there are things popping up in some comments that I don't see. So I want to give everyone some help here. If you have a question for Chip and me, please send your email to lisa@lisanorell.com. That's Lisa@Lisa, NIRELL.com. And we will make sure that we actually answer your questions and comments. I love my partnership with LinkedIn Learning, with LinkedIn Live. I was one of the early pioneers who just said, let's reach millions and millions of people through this wonderful medium. And my intention came true.
Yay!
And my life is so much richer because of Chip Conley.
Oh, thank you.
And again, I want to thank you for all of your support over the past 17 years of my books, of my consulting, my coaching, and our vibrant marketing community. We're going to be gathering in less than 2 weeks, right after your birthday, in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh, I love it there. Yeah.
For the 6th CMO's Leading Innovation Conference. So if you haven't heard about it, or you want to know how you can get involved, either in this one or the next one, which will be in a magical place, we won't exactly have the dates yet, Make sure you look there in the chat. You can go to that particular address, click 2022.eventbrite.com, or again, send me an email. I can send you the links and the information. What would be a closing thought for our wonderful group this morning?
Well, I think the closing thought might be, how are you investing in your emotional insurance? We have property and liability insurance for our homes when there's a fire or a flood or earthquake or something like that. But most of us actually are not very intentional about our emotional insurance when we're going through a rainy day. So how are you investing in relationships with others and practical tools and practices that can help support you with your own emotional insurance? That's, it's the great thing about that is you get to use that the rest of your life. You may have knowledge about some digital marketing thing that may last 5 years until that thing is obsolescent. The skills you learn about your emotional well-being will last you a lifetime.
Yes, and that is a perfect way to end this, and for Lisa to go get her breakfast. It takes some nutrition.
Delicious breakfast, by the way, overlooking the ocean.
Yes, I had every morning I have my spinach, pineapple, and mint smoothie.
Oh yeah,
which is one of my favorite.
Covering the bases.
I like to get all my greens early in the day because it fuels me. It fuels this big old brain of mine that can get dusty very easily. So Chip, I love you.
Love you too, my dear. Thank you for letting me be here with you, and thanks for coming on down. And check out modernelderacademy.com to learn more about what we do, as well as my daily blog, Wisdom Well, which if you just do Chip Conley, Wisdom Well on Google, you'll find it.
Yes, and stay tuned. Make sure you're following me because we will have more announcements about future gatherings in amazing places such as Baja. Namaste, everyone. Namaste.